see if I can pull up Facebook here real quick, because I actually need to use this later to monitor the stream. So, if you're just joining me, hang with me for a few seconds while I get some stuff set up here in the background, and then we'll get started with this week's live stream. I see Gloria's watching. Hi, Gloria. Your snake plant is doing great down at my house. Adjust my seat here a little bit. Okay. I think we're ready to roll. Oh, as soon as I find my mouse. There we go. We got 3 screens here, so easy to lose them. Welcome to this week's episode of Bob's Live, our weekly show right here on the internet. And now we're available both on Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So hopefully we're starting to get some more viewers over on YouTube. Anyhow, this week is definitely a little bit different than last week. If you caught the stream last week, I was out in my yard. And the cell service wasn't great because the ice storm took out one of the cell towers locally. So basically, if you was on one side of my house, you could get a great signal. If you was on the other side of my house, you basically had like dial-up internet speeds. So yeah, it was an interesting week last week. So anyhow, this week, we're actually going to be tackling a project that I had planned on doing last week. But before we get into that, I thought it would be nice to head out to the greenhouse and take a look at what's growing. And as you can see behind me, it's plug season. So seedling plugs, they're little baby plants that we grow and then ship out to wholesale greenhouses and little mom and pop garden centers all over the US, and they transplant them and grow them into the finished flowers like you find at our own stores. So this time of year, we're shipping out quite a few, and you'll see that in this video. This time of year is the peak of seedling growing season here at Bob's. So over the next few weeks, we'll be sowing and shipping about 30,000 individual trays of seedlings per week. Depending on the tray type, each tray can hold either 144, 288, or 512 seedlings. In this case, these begonias are in 288 trays. So this one tray right here is 288 plants. So that averages out to about 10 million individual plants going out the door each week. These seedlings will get shipped to other wholesale greenhouses and small independent garden centers. Alright, so that was a quick look at what's happening out in the greenhouse. So right now we're kind of in the peak of our plug season. So this last week was the peak of sowing, and because everything has like a 4 to 5 week crop time, the peak of our shipping is still out ahead of us. So right now we're kind of in between the two humps, I guess you could say. I see Patty says, "Hey John." Hi Patty. And well, over the next few weeks, not only are we going to be shipping out a lot of plugs, we're also going to start transitioning more into finished products. So we'll be taking those plugs that we're growing for ourselves and starting to transplant those into the finished products like you'll find at our stores this spring. So it's a really exciting time here in the greenhouse. Everything is, really growing, and it was especially nice today given the weather that we've had the past few weeks to walk around out there in the sunshine and it be warm and not cold and dreary. So this week I said that I wanted to talk about what I planned on talking about last week. And if you looked at the blog last week, now week before last, I actually didn't post a blog post last week, and that was because I had a slight emergency on Friday that I was working on. One of our robots, the computer that controls it, died, so I had to fix that. So that was sort of an emergency situation. Anyhow, week before last, we talked about spider plants and how to care for spider plants. So if you head over to our blog at bobsmarket.com, right now we have the spider plant care blog post as the first blog post on the homepage. So if you go to our homepage and you scroll down, there's spider plant care. And really, spider plants, they are super easy to take care of. They're a great beginner houseplant if you're just starting off with houseplants. And the cool thing about them is they're really easy to propagate also. So you can get more spider plants from your one spider plant. And spider plants, like I said, they're super easy to care for. They take bright, indirect sunlight. You want to avoid direct sunlight. That can kind of burn them. They'll grow in low light, but they tend to grow more slowly in low light. And they also are one of those plants, sort of like Christmas cacti, which I've got some over here that you'll see a little bit later behind me. They like to dry out a little bit between waterings. So with spider plants, if you forget to water them, it's actually not a bad thing. That kind of lets them dry out and lets their roots get a little bit of air, which roots do need air. And, they're pretty easy to care for in that regard when it comes to watering. And they're also pretty tolerant, or pretty able to withstand pests. So if you get like fungus gnats or something like that, it's not going to be a huge issue for the spider plant. Okay, so I'm lost here. There we go. What I want to do, let me get back to, there we go. What I want to do is, actually, I have a spider plant over here to transplant, so I'm going to roll up my sleeves. But I also need to switch cameras, and Since I've upgraded everything and switched to this mic boom, I actually need to swing it around. So if you can just hang tight for just a little bit while I make some adjustments here, I'll rejoin you in hopefully a few seconds. Alrighty. Here we go. Hopefully, let me double check. Okay. That was one of those things I forgot to look at to make sure I unmuted the microphone. Let me find the camera. There you are. Hi. Okay, so I've got the chat pulled up right here, which unfortunately on my phone, where it's streaming the same as you guys, there's a little bit of a time delay, so it's kind of weird because I'm watching myself move around out of sync with myself right now. Alright, so here is the spider plant that I'm going to be transplanting, and a little dead leaf there I'll pull off. But this spider plant, it is starting to produce these shoots. And right out here at the tip of it, let me zoom in there a little bit. But right out here at the tip, those are basically little baby spider plants. So what will happen is this will grow out. Eventually it will get heavy enough that it will kind of drape down over the side. And what you can do is you can actually cut these off and root them. So that's how the spider plant gets its name, is not only does it have these spindly leaves, but also where it kind of produces these shoots, it kind of, like a little swarm of spiders, I guess you could say, is what it sort of looks like. Okay, so I have a ginormous pot of dirt here. I have the empty pot that I'm going to be transplanting into. And I forgot to take the receipt out of it. Because I also used the pot this morning to carry my lunch in. So, double duty. Alright, what I'm going to do first, and let me scoot our spider plant out of the way here. What I'm going to do first is something that I like to do in the bottom of the pots that I plant in, and that is put a paper towel in the bottom. It's a little trick that I learned that helps hold the soil in, and that way you don't end up with dirt down in the bottom of your pot. Especially with a pot like this where the drainage tray is attached. I have some of these, like the one on my fiddle leaf fig here is the same type of pot. And what I did is I popped the drainage tray loose on it and then actually cut off the little studs that stick through to hold it. Because whenever I water my fiddle leaf fig, it doesn't like to have wet roots. So I'll let the water drain through, and then I'll pull the pan off, take it outside, and dump that excess water. But with this guy, it'll be fine just leaving the drainage tray attached. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stuff this paper towel down in the bottom, and then I find that to get it to stick in there really well, I'm just going to spray it down with some water. And a little mister bottle like this is a great tool to have in your house. I use it to mist down my plants. It helps keep the dust off the leaves. And this time of year when the air is really dry, It helps give them a little bit of moisture, kind of create a little bit of humidity around them. Um, and these are also easy to find. You can find them in the gardening section, but also if you don't find them in a gardening section, look in the hair care section of the store. So that's actually where I got this. It's, a little mister bottle for, I guess, hair product, or, like they use at the barber shop to kind of wet your hair down when they're cutting your hair. All right, so there is my paper towel in the bottom. And now I'm just going to start adding dirt. And this soil, what I'm using, it's a little bit of a mixture of soil. It's mostly our seed starting mix. But what this is kind of the test runs that run off of the end of our soil line. And because it's been setting for a while, it has dried out a little bit more than normal potting mix. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit, and then mist it down, and then add a little bit more, and go that route. Which, if you're transplanting houseplants at home, I tend to keep potting mix. I'll usually bag up some of this to take home, like in a little gallon Ziploc baggie. But I find that it does dry out in the house. So you might run into the same situation if you're transplanting at home when you're dealing with house plants. Okay, so I've got the bottom there pretty good. Before I pack that down, let me spray it here a little bit. And by spraying it and kind of getting it a little pre-moistened, that will also help water work its way down in whenever I water it here when I finish. I'm trying to keep potting mix off my nice new microphone. Of course, everything here at Bob's has dirt in it. It's kind of impossible to avoid. I get paperwork, it's covered in potting mix. Crack open a computer to work on it, it looks like you could grow plants in it. Alright. We're getting close. Yeah, a bit more. This container is pretty big compared to what I'm planting. But you have to keep in mind that spider plants really spread. So planting it in a larger pot is just planning for future growth. So a lot of times I'll plant something that I know is going to get a lot bigger already into a larger pot, and that way it has room to grow into it. So a good example of that is my avocado tree behind me. When I first transplanted this, it was out 5-6 inches tall. And at the rate it's going, I might have to trim it back here pretty soon. Okay, so I kind of made a little hole here for the plant to go in, and I'm just kind of spraying it down there. And now I've got the spider plant here. There's actually 3 separate spider plants in this one pot. And it is really jammed in there. Wow. Okay, there we go. Whoa, boy. Look at the roots on this thing. It definitely needed transplanted. So, it's actually, I would call that slightly root bound. So I'm going to go in here, just because the roots kind of circled the bottom of this pot, I'm going to go in and gently pull some of these loose, just to encourage it to sort of spread out. So if I don't do this, what could happen is those roots could just continue to circle. It's almost like planting a tree. You always want to plant trees kind of in square holes or holes with kind of sharp sides, and that'll prevent the roots from circling in the hole, especially if you have kind of a clay-based soil. Alright, so that looks a little bit better. They've all kind of grew clockwise. So I'm going to kind of gently twist that way, and that'll encourage them to spread out even more. And I could actually feel that they kind of did that when I twisted it. Okay. And there is room for some more dirt here around the sides. What I was trying to do was get it, kind of level with the soil. But where this potting mix is kind of dry, it kind of doesn't want to go down into the soil. So, and I thought that pot would be enough. I didn't pack it down when I got it. So I might have to run next door here a little bit later, get a little bit more soil. That's the upside to working in an office right next to a facility that is called the Dirt Room. Alright, so there we go. I've lost my spray bottle. There it is. First, spray off my hands a bit. I see in the comments, Patty's asking, how do I know what size pot to use? And that is kind of based off of what you're planting. So, something like a spider plant, I know that it's going to spread out and really grow. So probably here in a couple years or so, I will have to transplant this to a larger pot yet again. For smaller, slow-growing stuff, you can usually get by with a smaller pot, and it really depends on the plant. So, something like this Christmas cactus that's looking kind of gangly. This Christmas cactus, it is about, I'm thinking it's around 4 or 5 years old. So, where I have it in a smaller pot, it's not a very fast grower, and I tend to trim it back, so this size pot works great for it. This avocado tree, I know it's going to get a lot bigger. I know that that root system is going to take up a lot of space, so I put it into a really large pot. You know, you just kind of have to make that judgment yourself. So this guy, I know he's going to get bigger. And let me work and talk here at the same time. What I'm doing now is just kind of misting this upper layer of soil just to start to get it wet. Go ahead and hit the plant a little bit too. So I got its leaves a little bit dirty, so that'll help clean it off. And, yep, here we go. Got my little baby watering can. I'm going to give it a good drink here. I'll give it a little bit, so I give it about half the watering can to start off with. And yeah, that feels pretty heavy, so I think that's pretty good. So going back to what size pot to pick, clean up just a hair here. Sometimes I don't choose wisely when it comes to picking a pot. Oh. So I was talking about this fiddle leaf fig earlier. I planted it in this a year ago, and I thought that this pot was, you know, perfect size for it because it was half this height when I planted it. And I thought, yeah, I can get by a couple years without needing to transplant it. And something I've noticed is if I try to pick up the pot, yeah, there's roots that have grown into the drainage tray. So it's basically already outgrown this pot. So I need to go to an even larger pot for it. So yeah, this is a case where I didn't choose too wisely when it came to it. Now something else is this ZZ plant. So it's been in this pot for about 3 or 4 years. It's a really slow grower, and it's just now to a size where I really need to transplant it into something bigger. And you can see the new growth there coming out on it. Something that I did do is I've taken cuttings off of this plant, and a couple weeks ago I grabbed this. We transplanted these cuttings, and they're doing really well. So in a few years, 3 or 4 years, this pot will look like that one. Another slow grower is Duncane or Dieffenbachia. So these I'm also growing from cuttings, and we transplanted these a few weeks ago. And yeah, you can see they're already, since I've transplanted them, they're starting to get some new growth on them. I do need to kind of, I don't know, adjust how I have them setting, because they're just sort of growing in one direction out of the pot. I kind of want to get them to curl back the other direction. So yeah, when it comes to choosing pot size, it's, for me, I kind of make an educated guess and go from there, but it can be sort of hit or miss. And well, I'm going to go back to the other camera, so bear with me for just a moment. Oh. All right, so that is a quick how to transplant spider plant. So it's super easy to care for, and what it'll do over the years is it'll kind of spread out in that pot. It's already putting out shoots for little babies, so later on this year we might jump back to it and take some cuttings off of it and propagate those. So that might be kind of fun to do. Something that I missed, let me jump back to the web page here. Down at the bottom of this article, we have a photo of a little spider plant baby. So that's what that spider plant is just starting to do. You can see it coming out of the top of it. But it'll produce little babies like this, and then you can cut those off, and you can either start them in water, or you can just kind of transplant them directly and keep the soil a little extra moist for the first few weeks until they take root. And yeah, they're super simple to propagate, because you basically already have a little baby plant there that you can just cut off and transplant. So that's part of what makes spider plant such a great starter house plant. And well, that is all that I have for this week. And be sure to join us next week. I'm going to try to get back uptown and do another update on the greenhouse construction that we have going on up there. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. And until next time, keep growing.